The morning sun filtered through the windows of Rosie's diner, casting warm patches of light across the red vinyl booths. It was the kind of place that had stood on Main Street for 40 years, where the coffee was always hot and the welcome was always genuine. Robert Matthews sat in a corner booth, his silver hair perfectly combed, his navy suit pressed and expensive. At 58, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who had built an empire from nothing. But today, his blue eyes held a weariness that no amount of success could ease. Beside him sat 4 identical little girls, each with golden blonde hair that fell to their shoulders, each wearing the same shade of purple. Emma, Lily, Sophie, and Grace, 4-year-old quadruplets who had lost their mother just 6 months ago. Robert stared at the laminated menu, his hands trembling slightly. The diner was busy with the breakfast crowd, and he could feel eyes turning toward them. People always stared at the girls, 4 perfect mirror images of the wife he had lost. A woman approached their table, her uniform a cheerful orange and white. She was perhaps in her early 30s, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her name tag read Diane. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice gentle as she looked at the children. "What a beautiful family." Robert cleared his throat. He had rehearsed this moment. "We'll take the cheapest breakfast option you have. 5 of those, please." Diane paused, her pen hovering over her notepad. She studied Robert's face for a moment, taking in the expensive watch on his wrist, the quality of his suit, the leather shoes that probably cost more than she made in a month. "Sir," she said quietly, "are you sure that's what you want?" Robert felt his jaw tighten. He knew how it looked. A man in a $1,000 suit asking for the cheapest items on the menu. But she didn't understand. She couldn't understand. "Yes," he said, his voice harder than he intended. "That's what I want." The girls sat quietly, their small hands folded on the table. They had learned to be still, to not ask for things, to not cause trouble. It broke Robert's heart every time he saw how subdued they had become. Diane didn't move. Instead, she set down her notepad and slid into the booth across from them, her eyes meeting Robert's with a directness that surprised him. "Forgive me for being forward," she said gently, "but I've been working in this diner for 12 years. I've learned to read people, and what I see is a man who's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders." Robert felt something crack inside his chest. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "The cheapest option we have is oatmeal and toast," Diane continued, her voice soft but firm. "No butter, no jam, nothing extra. Is that really what you want for these beautiful little girls?" "It's all I can afford to give them," Robert whispered, and the words tasted like ash in his mouth. Diane tilted her head, confusion crossing her face. Then understanding seemed to dawn, and her expression softened even more. "May I tell you something, sir?" she asked. "My grandmother used to say that the things we give our children aren't measured in dollars. She raised 6 kids during the Depression. Some days, all they had was bread and water. But she gave them something money couldn't buy. She gave them her presence, her love, her time." Robert felt tears prickling behind his eyes. "Their mother died 6 months ago," he said quietly, so the girls wouldn't hear. "Cancer. She was 32 years old." Diane reached across the table and gently placed her hand over his. "I'm so sorry," she said, and he could hear the genuine compassion in her voice. "Everything reminds me of her," Robert continued, the words tumbling out now. "The house we bought together, the cars she used to drive, even the food she used to make for the girls. Every time I try to give them something nice, all I can think about is how Sarah should be here to see it. How she should be the one making them breakfast, taking them to the park, tucking them in at night." He paused, his voice breaking. "So I stopped. I started choosing the cheapest, simplest options for everything. Because if I can't give them what they really need, their mother, then what's the point of giving them anything else?" The diner noise seemed to fade away. Diane's eyes glistened with tears. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly, "you're not denying them because you don't care. You're denying yourself because you care too much." Robert looked at her, confused. "You're punishing yourself," Diane explained gently. You think that if you can't give them everything, can't give them their mother back, then you don't deserve to give them anything. But that's not how love works. That's not how life works. She glanced at the 4 little girls who were watching their father with worried eyes. These babies don't need fancy things, Diane said. But they need to see their daddy smile. They need to see that life can still have joy in it, even when it's hard, even when someone we love is gone. Robert looked at his daughters. Emma, the oldest by 3 minutes, reached out and took his hand. It's okay, Daddy, she whispered. We're not very hungry. That's when Robert broke. Tears streamed down his face as he pulled all 4 girls close to him, holding them tight. I'm so sorry, he whispered into their soft blonde hair. I've been so lost without your mama. But she wouldn't want this. She wouldn't want me to forget how to take care of you, how to live. Diane stood up quietly and walked away, giving them their moment. When she returned a few minutes later, she was carrying a tray laden with food. Pancakes with butter and syrup, scrambled eggs, bacon, fresh orange juice, and 4 chocolate chip cookies still warm from the oven. This is on the house, she said firmly when Robert tried to protest, and I don't want to hear another word about it. As the girls ate with an enthusiasm Robert hadn't seen in months, Diane sat down again. My grandmother also used to say something else, she said with a warm smile. She said that we honor the people we've lost by continuing to live, by continuing to find joy, by continuing to love. Robert nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Your wife, Diane continued, I never knew her, but I bet she loved these girls more than anything in the world. And I bet she loved you too. Don't you think she'd want you to take care of yourself? To let yourself be happy again? I don't know how, Robert admitted. Everything feels empty without her. I know, Diane said gently. My husband died 3 years ago, heart attack. He was only 35. For a long time, I couldn't even look at our wedding photos. Every happy memory felt like a wound. How did you get through it? Robert asked. Day by day, Diane said, and by accepting help. By letting people in, by understanding that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, it means carrying their love with us as we continue on. Over the next hour, as the girls ate and chattered and slowly came back to life, Robert and Diane talked. She told him about her husband, about the grief that had nearly consumed her, about the slow journey back to herself. He told her about Sarah, about their whirlwind romance, about the joy they'd shared and the devastation of her diagnosis. When it was finally time to leave, Robert reached into his wallet. Diane shook her head, but he insisted. Please, he said, let me do this, not as payment, as a thank you, for reminding me what really matters. He left $500 on the table, but more than that, he left with something he hadn't felt in months, hope. The next morning, Robert came back to the diner, and the morning after that. Each time, Diane greeted them with a warm smile and a kind word. She learned the girls' names, their favorite foods, their little personalities. She talked to Robert about grief and healing, about memories and moving forward. 3 months later, Robert asked Diane if she'd like to have coffee with him outside of the diner. 6 months after that, he introduced her to his late wife's parents, who embraced her with tears of gratitude for bringing light back into their son-in-law's eyes. It wasn't a fairy tale romance. It was something deeper. 2 wounded souls helping each other heal. 2 people who understood that love doesn't end when someone dies, but it can grow in new directions if we allow it. A year after that first morning in the diner, Robert and Diane were married in a small ceremony. The quadruplets wore purple dresses, their mother's favorite color, and carried flowers to honor the woman they would always remember. On the altar, Robert placed a photo of Sarah because Diane insisted. She gave you those beautiful girls, Diane said. She'll always be part of this family. As Robert looked at his new wife, at his daughters laughing and playing, at the photo of the woman he had lost, he finally understood what Diane's grandmother had meant. We honor those we've lost by continuing to live, by opening our hearts, by accepting that grief and joy can exist together, that endings and new beginnings are part of the same story. And sometimes, life's greatest blessings come from the simplest acts of kindness, from a waitress who saw past appearances, who offered compassion instead of judgment, who reminded a broken man that he was still capable of love. The cheapest option on the menu had cost $3.50, but the kindness that came with it, that was priceless.